Washington Journal continues.
And we are pleased to welcome to the table Senator Roger Wicker, Republican of Mississippi and a member of the Banking Committee. And we're going to continue our discussions on the debt talks and some of the issues surrounding money. And Congressman, I just want to get your reaction when you saw the Washington Post lead story this morning. Social Security is on the table when it comes to the debt talks. That's by President Obama. What was your reaction?
I think they're floating trial balloons, and I hope everything is on the table. But let me say this. This is D-Day, really, in the talks leading up to the debt ceiling 0 hour, which is August the 2nd. If something is going to happen, if a bargain is going to be reached, it really needs to happen today and tomorrow and sort of be published next week in order for the American people to hear about it, get the details, in order for the legislative draftsman to be able to put it into law so it'll actually work. And actually, this could be as significant a day as that day in the 1980s when President Reagan and Speaker Tip O'Neill came to an agreement on Social Security. This was a Republican president, and the Speaker and leader of a pretty big Democratic majority in the House of Representatives, Tip O'Neill, coming together and agreeing on changes, not cuts in Social Security, but changes in the way it's calculated, and basically it saves Social Security for some 3 decades. A major achievement by any standards. Either one of them could have walked out of that room and engaged in some hyperbole or demagoguery, but they didn't, and they came to an agreement which was good for current retirees, which was good for future retirees, and was good for America and good for the system. It showed that Republicans and Democrats can put aside their differences and come to an agreement. We're at that sort of point today, but we don't have much time. I mean, here it is, July the 7th, is that right? And the date we've been told that we must act is August the 2nd. Now, there's some speculation that that could be pushed back. But this is a very significant pivot point in the process, and so you know, my best wishes and prayers are with the president and the speaker and the other congressional leaders as they talk today, because they could be about to do something very big and something very positive.
Well, 2 things you said, Senator Wicker. You see this as a trial balloon. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think the president, in order to make changes in Social Security, the president's going to have some buy-in from people like your previous guest and his friends on the political left. And so without announcing something from the Oval Office, I think what you do is you kind of leak it through sources, let it get on the front pages of the Washington Post and Wall Street Journal, and see how much of an outcry that is. But I do not think either Speaker Boehner or the President are talking about cuts in Social Security. I mean, nothing I've heard involves actual cuts. And of course, most of the proposals that we hear, I don't know specifics about what was talked about over the weekend, but most of what we hear would affect people 54 years of age and younger, and it would involve not cuts, but differences in the calculation of annual cost of living adjustments. Maybe another gradual, very, very gradual increase in the retirement age for people not about to retire, but people, say, my children's age. That sort of thing would not be, in my judgment, a cut, but an adjustment over time to save the program and make it work perhaps for another 3 decades like Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did.
And Senator Wicker, you also said that everything should be on the table in your view. Does that include tax increases? Does that include revenue changes, loopholes, as Eric Cantor talked about yesterday?
You know, I think Eric Cantor is a very thoughtful person, and I don't think he made that statement offhandedly. I think he knew exactly what he was saying, and I think what he was saying is we're open to tax loopholes. For example, the Senate voted overwhelmingly to end the ethanol subsidy, which is a tax.
Did you vote
loophole.
in favor of that?
Well, I didn't vote in favor of it because it's going to end anyway on December the 31st, and I felt it would be disruptive to business plans to do it immediately. But basically, it's going to end anyway. But that sort of thing, in return for a reduction in overall tax rates, personal and corporate, I think is something that probably the Republican leadership was talking about when Eric Cantor spoke out and made that statement.
Senator Roger Wicker became a senator after serving for several years in the House. He was appointed in 2008, or 2007, I should say.
That's right. It was New Year's Eve.
When Trent Lott left the Senate,
right, yes.
And was elected in his own right in 2008 to his first term after serving for about, 12 years in the House of Representatives?
I started in the House in 1995.
Senator Wicker is our guest as we continue our discussion on debt talks, which are occurring today. Clarksville, Tennessee. John, Democrats line. You are first up with Senator Wicker.
Clarksville, Tennessee. John.
John, you know the rule. You got to turn down the volume on your TV. We will come back to you. Just listen through your phone, folks. Mark is a Republican in Vero Beach. Hi, Mark.
Yes, good morning. Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
Senator, I have 3 quick points to make. The first point is, I heard a statistic the other day about revenue and expenditures. In the past 8 years, revenue to the government has increased by 20%, but expenditures have gone up 70%. That's the problem right there. It's not a revenue issue, as you say. It's a spending issue, and you all need to make sure that the American public hear that loud and clear. The second point, just prior to you was Representative Becerra, and he made a comment which is very telling to me. He cited Bill Gates as somebody that doesn't pay his fair share of taxes. He said the first $50,000, Bill Gates pays what everybody else pays, and then he said, and everything over that he makes is the problem. It gives you an insight to how some of these people think. It's a problem that Bill Gates makes good money. Bill Gates employs tens of thousands of people, which he would not employ if he made $50,000. Third point. Day before yesterday, or maybe it was yesterday, Barack Obama had his Twitter town hall, and he said that the Republicans are holding a gun to the head of the American public. Excuse me, Sarah Palin put a little crosshair on a picture, and she was demonized by the media and the Democrats for weeks. Those are my points.
Senator Wicker.
Okay. Well, I think the way we would put the last point is this is a moment of maximum leverage for those of us who would like a balanced budget, who actually would like a balanced budget amendment and legislation capping the amount of expenditures every year. So maybe it's better to say using leverage rather than a loaded gun, which might be a bit of hyperbole. As to the second point, you know, I really I don't think you find anybody on Capitol Hill who lies awake at night worrying about how much tax Bill Gates pays. Our concern is that when you start raising taxes and trying to target the rich, what you're really ending up doing is targeting not the mega billionaires like Bill Gates, but small business people, risk takers, job creators. Most of the jobs created in the United States come from small business. And that's the reason we fought so hard last December, and I think that's the reason that a huge Democratic majority in the House of Representatives, even then, agreed not to raise taxes on job creators. And then your first point is the larger point. This year, we will spend in the federal government $3.7 trillion, and we'll take in only $2.2 trillion. Clearly, I agree with you. We have a spending problem and not a revenue problem. And any agreement that I would vote for needs to acknowledge that fact and attack spending where it actually is.
Senator Wicker, your colleague Barbara Boxer was on the floor yesterday of the Senate talking about corporations. Want to get your response to this.
A family supported by a truck driver and a dental hygienist made a combined $107,000, had a higher tax rate than ExxonMobil. The tax rate for corporate jets is $3 billion over 10 years. Subsidies to the biggest 5 oil companies costing us $21 billion over 10 years. So what I'm saying is we don't have to balance the budget on the backs of the senior citizens who need their Medicare, on the students who need their Pell Grants. We don't need to do that.
Senator Wicker.
Well, the senator from California is advocating higher taxes on oil companies. Of course, the reason their profits are so high right now is that gas prices are high. I've advocated policies over the years, and I think Republicans have advocated production and drilling policies that would have brought the price of gasoline down and brought those record profits down. But if you tax the oil companies, I think what we're going to get in the United States is less domestic production. It'll give an advantage to overseas oil companies. And I don't think even the senator from California wants that, as jealous as some Americans might be of oil companies. And then, you know, it seems that in the last 2 weeks, the president and his spokesman have seized onto this issue of corporate jets. It reminds me of the tax on yachts from the I guess it was 1990. There was some fervor of jealousy with regard to people that owned yachts, and so Congress passed a luxury tax. What we did, we lost between 7,000 and 8,000 jobs in the boat building industry, and Democrats couldn't rush back to Washington fast enough to repeal this luxury tax on yachts. I think it would end up being the same thing. I know it wouldn't be much of a revenue raiser, but it probably would succeed in throwing a lot of people in the aviation manufacturing business out of jobs.
Austin and Salt Lake, you are up and you are on with Senator Roger Wicker. Good morning.
Thank you for taking my call. Good morning, gentlemen. Great discussion. I'm glad the Social Security issue is on the table, and I think all welfare and entitlement programs should be on the table. Subsidies, welfare, bailouts. My question to you, Senator Wicker, is since the government helped cause this economic problem and single-handedly made it worse, should there be, like there should be separation of church and state, perhaps separation of government and economics?
Well, I don't know how you can separate government and economics. I think to the extent that government spends less, taxes less, and is less of a regulatory burden, we can help the economics of this country. But I don't know how you could separate it.
I don't know if you saw David Brooks' column from Monday, July 4th. You've probably heard about this, the mother of all no-brainers. David Brooks writing in the New York Times that Republicans should move forward with the deal, that they've gotten just about everything that they want.
Well, okay, I would say this. The Republican response to that, from people who've been in the room, is that Mr. Brooks was mistaken in the premise, in other words, the facts that he was relying on to offer this opinion were not there. And I know, for example, Senator Kyle, the Republican whip, said actually there's been quite a bit of discussion about revenue raisers, user fees, the sale of federal property to raise money. And so to the extent that Mr. Brooks has perhaps gotten one side of the facts, I think it's probably a flawed opinion piece.
Next call for Senator Wicker comes from New York City. Alan, Democrat.
Thank you very, very much. I don't even know where to begin. You know, number one, Senator, you know, the whole disparity of income, it's like 100 years ago with the robber barons, where you have a tiny number of people controlling more and more of the economy. Taxes are very low. Corporate taxes in this country are the lowest, or almost the lowest in the world. You know, it seems as if all you're angling to do is to destroy Obama's presidency and destroy the rest of us along with Obama. I think history is going to really put you people, you know, in such a bad light for what you're doing to this country. I mean, you know, taxes. You know, yes, people making over $400,000 or $500,000 should pay higher taxes. 30 or 40 years ago, the high tax rate was almost 80 or 90%, and we were having a boom economy. I just don't understand how you can justify, you know, with what you're doing to this country. I really don't. And I think the American people are beginning to wake up and understand that you really just represent the rich, and that's about it.
Okay. I appreciate the point of view, which is a very important point of view. I am perfectly willing to have an election on that basis. If Alan's party wants to put forward a platform of going back to 70 and 80 and 90% tax rates, for the people who are creating jobs in this country, I'll be happy to have that debate, and Republicans will win an overwhelming election because American people reject that amount of confiscation. It wasn't a